My father, Christopher, froze at the airport when a man in a navy blue suit handed him a thick envelope with my name on the front. My brother, Daniel, stood beside him, pale, pretending nothing was wrong. 4 days earlier, they had laughed as I left my mother's dining room after my brother said, "You're not part of the family. Don't show up." I didn't scream. I just left. And now, here they were, their world falling apart exactly how they had planned for mine to fall apart. Before I tell you what really happened that night, please like and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Have you ever had to draw a line with your family and refuse to erase it? I remember that Sunday as if it was supposed to mean something. My mother, Lisa, called it a family dinner, as always, as if the word alone could fix the cracks between us. I spent half the afternoon in my apartment kitchen making lasagna, spreading garlic butter on bread, and choosing a bottle of Merlot I couldn't really afford. It wasn't about the food. It was my peace offering, my proof that I still cared enough to show up. Her house smelled of cinnamon candles and old photos. Everything was too sweet, too staged. The laughter I heard from the entryway died down as soon as I walked in. My father looked up from his phone and gave me a single nod. My mother smiled the way she smiles at friendly neighbors. My brother Daniel had his arm draped over the back of his chair, bragging about his new business, the one I had quietly kept afloat on 3 separate occasions. I set down my dishes, the steam fogging up the plastic tablecloth, and waited for someone to make room for me. No one did. The meal went on as usual, chaotic, loud, a performance with no audience for me. They talked about the next family reunion in the spring, throwing around dates and hotel names as if I wasn't sitting right there. I listened and nodded where I was supposed to, my heart beating harder than it should. I didn't want an invitation, I just wanted to be acknowledged. When there was a pause in the conversation, I smiled and said in the steadiest voice I could manage, "Just let me know when the reunion is. I'll book my room early this time." The words hung in the air a second too long and then fell flat. My mother's fork scraped against her plate. Daniel didn't look up. My father cleared his throat and asked if anyone wanted more bread. I should have been used to it by then, how they could erase me in plain sight. But something about that moment made the air feel thinner, sharper. Maybe it was the effort behind my calm voice or the way my mother refused to meet my eyes. Maybe I was finally old enough to recognize cruelty when it was disguised as politeness. I poured myself a small glass of wine and leaned back, watching the scene as if I wasn't a part of it. The golden son with his audience, the mother keeping the peace with silence, the father measuring his control by the tone of the room. I told myself to breathe, to not ruin another Sunday. But a part of me already knew that peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's just training for surrender. That was the last Sunday I ever tried to earn a place at their table. The silence after my question felt endless, and then Daniel finally looked up. He leaned back in his chair with that smug half-smile he uses when he wants to land a punch without lifting a finger. "You're not part of the family," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't show up." No one was horrified. No one told him to stop. The room didn't explode. It just caved in. My mother pressed her napkin to her lips, trying not to smile. My father slammed his hand on the table and let out a laugh, as if it was the funniest thing he'd heard all week. The sharp metallic sound filled the room, bouncing off the walls. The whole table erupted in laughter. I remember thinking how strange it was that a sound could hurt more than words. I looked at the lasagna I had made, still steaming, the cheese bubbling as if it belonged to someone else. I felt heat rise up my neck, not from anger, but from the shame of understanding how easily they had rehearsed this scene without me knowing. I didn't say anything. I put down my glass, folded my napkin, and pushed my chair back slowly enough to make them uncomfortable. Daniel smirked. "Oh, come on, Nancy. Can't you take a joke?" I looked him in the eyes for the first time that night. "Did you mean it?" I asked quietly. He didn't deny it. None of them did. I took my coat from the back of the chair. My mother's voice followed me, thin, polite, and useless. Nancy, stay. It's just a meal. I didn't turn around as I put my arms through the sleeves. It's a message, I said, and I got it. Outside, the cold air stung my eyes. Behind me, the laughter started again, muffled by the door, as if they couldn't stand even a minute of silence. I stood on the porch for a long moment, breathing in the cold air until the shaking in my chest stopped. Then I walked to my car, the untouched lasagna still warm in my hands. There's a type of silence that doesn't ask for an explanation. It announces its own end. I didn't slam the door or cry on the way home. I just drove through the dark suburbs, my headlights cutting through the fog, with one clear thought repeating like a heartbeat. This is the last time I try to belong in a place that laughs when I bleed. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight slicing through the blinds, the kind that makes dust look like falling snow. My phone was face down on the table, with no calls, no messages, no apologies. The silence was louder than anything they could have said. I made coffee, sat by the window, and tried to convince myself that this is what peace felt like. Empty, but calm. But peace isn't silence when it's built on avoidance. It's just waiting for the next wound. By the second day, the calm started to feel fragile. I checked my phone once, then twice. Nothing. They hadn't even noticed I was gone. Or maybe they had, and that was the point. On the third night, I left my phone in another room and told myself I didn't care anymore. On the fourth day, it finally buzzed. I stared at the screen for a long second before opening the message. It was from Daniel. "Hey, weird question. Your bank blocked the transfer. The loan payment didn't go through." No greeting, no apology, no mention of the dinner. Just business, straight to the wallet. I read it twice. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, and then I typed 4 words that felt like they had been waiting for years to exist. Not family, no funding. Then I blocked his number. I thought my hands would be shaking, but they weren't. Instead, a strange calm spread through me, the kind that comes right before a storm, except this time, the storm wasn't mine to endure. An hour later, another message came, this time from my father. I didn't open it. I just turned my phone over and let it vibrate on the table until it stopped. The only sound left was the low, steady, and indifferent hum of the refrigerator. That night, I sat on the floor surrounded by bank statements, receipts, and transfer records, years of emergencies that always had Daniel's name on them. The amounts blurred together. The pattern was clear. My generosity had become both his safety net and his weapon. I went over each transaction with a yellow highlighter, watching the paper glow under the lamp. Every mark was a bruised piece of evidence showing how long I had funded their comfort at the cost of my sanity. When I was done, I stacked the papers neatly and whispered to myself, "This is over." Outside, rain began to beat against the window. For the first time, it didn't sound like loneliness. The next day, my phone remained silent. No calls, no laughter, no Daniel. But I knew how this worked. People who feed on you panic when you stop bleeding for them. By evening, I heard the first knock on my door, then another, louder one. I didn't move. Through the peephole, I saw my father's shoulders. Daniel was pacing beside him, his anger obvious. His rhythm matched the knocking, steady, entitled, demanding. I held a cup of tea with both hands and stood in the center of my apartment, my heart steady. They knocked until my picture frames vibrated. I didn't answer. I just listened until the sound faded, replaced by the purr of their truck driving away. That's when I understood that silence is a mirror. It shows people exactly who they are when they can no longer use you. When the night finally settled, I looked at the pile of highlighted papers on my table and smiled. Not a happy smile, but the kind of smile that knows something irreversible has begun. 4 days ago, I had left their house with nothing. That night, I had something better, boundaries that were non-refundable. 3 days later, an envelope appeared at my door. It was white, with my name written in my father's neat handwriting. Inside were some bills. No note, just cash. It was a guilt payment, an installment for my silence. I looked at it for a long time, then picked it up and dropped it in the trash. The small sound of the bills hitting the plastic felt cleaner than any apology. An hour later, my phone vibrated. My father's name lit up the screen. I answered on the fourth ring. "Why?" he said before I could speak. He sighed in that rehearsed way that means, "I'm about to justify something cruel." "The loan payment failed," he said quickly. "It's a mess. Late fees, problems with suppliers. We just needed a few days' grace. It's not like we used you, Nancy. Don't take it personally." I let out a short, sharp laugh. "That's the problem," I said. "You never did." He said my name again, softer this time, as if that would fix everything. I hung up. After that call, I stopped pretending this was about money. It wasn't. It was about ownership. They had built a world where my value depended on what I gave. Now, they were watching it collapse. That night, I opened my banking app. Every emergency transfer, every wire, every favor that somehow became a debt. I printed every statement until the printer complained. Then I highlighted every transaction linked to Daniel. When I was finished, the pile glowed yellow, bright enough to see the pattern clearly. The next morning, I put everything into a manila envelope. On the front, I wrote, "This is who I am. Ask yourselves who you have been." I dropped it in the mailbox and didn't pay for tracking. If it got lost, it meant it had already served its purpose. By that afternoon, their calls doubled. My mother left voicemails full of rehearsed-sounding tremors. "Things got out of hand. Come over for dinner, we'll talk." Then another at midnight. "Family gets through things, Nancy. Daniel is under a lot of pressure. 4 mentions of family in 1 minute, like a magic spell." On the 5th day, an email arrived. The subject was payment plan. It was a ridiculous color-coded spreadsheet. Daniel listed amounts he might start paying back next year. At the bottom, he wrote, "Let's get past this. We're family, right?" I stared at the word family until it blurred. That's when a call came in from an unknown number. "Miss Nancy?" a calm male voice asked. "This is Anthony from Horizon Legal. We're confirming your signature as a co-signer on a large business loan in the name of Daniel." My pulse stopped. "Excuse me?" "It seems your signature is on the document," he said. "We verify before processing." I didn't sign anything. There was a pause. "We have noted some inconsistencies. You will not be held responsible. We will be in touch." When the call ended, I just stared at the wall. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from clarity. They hadn't just taken my money, they had taken my name. I called a lawyer I know from work, Margaret. Her voice was steady and sharp. "This isn't a misunderstanding," she said. "This is identity theft. Stay calm, document everything. We'll handle this quietly." That word, quietly, made sense. People like them thrive on chaos. Silence is how you win. So, I documented everything. Every voicemail, every forged invoice, every payment I had made in good faith. I labeled the folder paper cuts, small wounds that were finally bleeding the truth. The next morning, my lawyer, Margaret, sent a formal cease and desist letter to Daniel's business address. 2 hours later, I received an email from him. "You think you're better than us now? You're going to regret this." I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to my grandmother Sandra's cabin, the only place that had ever felt safe. She opened the door before I could knock. "It's about time," she said. Her voice didn't need to ask what had happened. When I told her everything, the dinner, the forgery, the threats, she didn't flinch. "They will always take you for granted if you stay on the ground," she said, pouring me some tea. "Stand up and they'll call you tall as if it's an insult." Outside, the rain started again. "What do I do?" I asked her. She looked at me, her eyes firm. "You've already done it." 2 weeks later, my father, Christopher, and my brother, Daniel, were standing in the middle of the airport, their perfect world falling apart, when a man in a navy blue suit handed them a thick envelope with my name on the front. It was an official and final summons. I wasn't there to see it, but Margaret sent me a 1-line text. "It's done. They have been served." I looked at the message without feeling victory or guilt, just the quiet relief of someone finally turning on the lights in a dark room. For the first time, I didn't owe anyone anything. When the dust finally settled, the silence no longer felt heavy. It felt earned. The legal mess untangled itself exactly as it should have. Daniel's fraudulent loan was voided. The business bank accounts were frozen. My father tried to argue, but every lie left a paper trail with his signature on it. Margaret handled everything with surgical calm. She didn't gloat, and neither did I. Justice doesn't need applause, it just needs to work. I didn't reach out to them afterward. There was no need. The news traveled in whispers. Daniel's business collapsed. My father's credit was ruined. My mother started avoiding the neighbors who had finally stopped believing her stories about a misunderstood family. One night, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but something in me, the part that still remembered her hands braiding my hair, made me pick up. Her voice was softer this time, stripped of any performance. "I'm sorry, Nancy," she said, her voice breaking, "for everything, for not protecting you, for letting them use you." I didn't cry, I just listened. When she asked me to come to the reunion, I said, "No, Mom, but I can forgive you from here." She didn't argue. She just whispered, "I love you," and hung up. That night, I sat on my balcony, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like rain. The city lights twinkled below, steady and indifferent. I looked at the envelope of receipts on my table, the proof of everything, and put it away in a drawer. Some truths don't need to be revisited. They just need to exist. I made tea, turned off my phone, and breathed. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel like something I had to buy. It felt like something I had built with silence, boundaries, and the courage to stop bleeding for people who never noticed the wound. I used to think peace was about everyone getting along. Now I know it's about walking away and still wishing them well. My family's reunion went on without me, their table perfectly set except for one empty chair in the middle. That space said everything I never had to. If you've ever had to choose yourself over people who wouldn't stop taking, I hope this reminds you that silence isn't weakness, it's recovery. Thank you for listening to my story. Tell me where you're watching from and if you've ever had to draw a line with family. Your stories keep this space honest. And don't forget to subscribe. There's more truth where that came from.